Okay,
All right.
here we go. Are you ready? And action.
Wet strength tissue. Don't say that 5 times fast.
No.
No, because it just would be a mess. So, you know, for a while this stuff has kind of been all the rage, and getting our hands on it was a little bit of a challenge, but we have an ample supply now. So Elizabeth and I have spent some time playing with it. This is our introductory video where we want to give you some basic information about it and show you a little bit about what we did. I'm going to, it's sparkly paint, you can't not love it. I'm going to show you just kind of the basics.
Look at how beautiful this is.
About brayering some paint on, and then if you look at this patterning, you can't get that any other way than what I did, which is to scrunch it up and put it face down in the paint, because what happens is the paint adheres to the front here, and then when you open it up, you have all those areas underneath where the paint isn't, and that's how you get that really cool patterning. So
What are you going to do with that?
well, funny you should ask.
Oh, I was hoping you might give it to me so I could tear it up into pieces.
You can, that's yours.
Really?
If I see that, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's yours.
Wow.
So when we were playing initially, and we're not working with sprays today, or I'm not, I will going forward, but I was playing with some colors. And one of the things that I really discovered, so this is just, I left it crumpled. I like the texture that you get when it's crumpled. Nothing special, excuse me, all I did was tear it up and use some gel medium to put it down. This, conversely, again, lots and lots of texture, but rather than put that down with gel medium, I put that down with sticky stuff. And I very deliberately scrunched it up so that I could get all of that texture. And while you want things smooth when you're creating a paper painting, what I want is the ability to do all of this. And so this stuff is versatile enough. You can monkey with it when it's wet. You can monkey with it when it's not. And you'll see me tear it, but you had to really work on it to tear it, unlike regular tissue. And we'll show you that too. And then Elizabeth has got a whole different way that she's going to look at this for you.
I do. So, you'll see me do the sample, but I used so much water that it's going to be wet for the next 3 days.
It's still drying.
Yeah, well, it'll be dry tomorrow, honestly. But so I did this one while we were preparing for this video yesterday, and it was dry this morning. So here you can see a fine example of where the stamps on the wet are still visible, and the darker areas, the paint pooled down in those crinkle areas. So I just love this. I mean, I could also glue this down in a collage in a background area, crinkled like your journal, like in a background section, or like maybe if I wanted to create fabric, what I like about it is I could put gel medium like you did in your journal and just push it and crumple it on the collage, because again, it's so strong and resisting of the moisture. I couldn't really do that with regular tissue. And then the other thing is, if I don't like it, I can take it off and reposition it, because I've done that too. And even though I've scrunched it down with the gel medium, if I don't like it and I pull it off, it doesn't tear, and I can reapply it somewhere else. So I'm loving that.
Yeah, well, and that's a really important distinction between wet strength tissue and regular tissue. There is a little bit of body in regular tissue, and you can work with it, but it tears much more readily. And for something like you just described, it's not happening. You're just going to take that, wipe it off, and throw it away, because you're not going to, obviously once it's dry, you're not going to remove it. But even regular tissue, when it's wet, is just going to shred when you try to pick it up.
Totally. But I just love how this came out once it dried on the desk, and it just took overnight. So
yeah,
we can show them how to do it.
Absolutely.
Unless you have any other humor you want to add.
No.
Nothing on camera, right? Only the off camera stuff. Those are the bloopers. Beep.
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, be nice. You're on camera now, forever. It never goes away what's on the internet.
We didn't do this.
Right.
So
say something nice. Smile. Look happy.
Something nice.
There you go. There we go.
All right, you lunatic. Shall we carry on here?
Yes. All right. Your glasses match your hands, which match your paper.
Can you tell which colors I like?
Yes, I can.
So wet strength tissue. This has been all the rage for a while, and you and I decided it was time to play with it. And so the first thing that I want to show everyone, is this is a sample that I made, and the paper has a tendency to get a little bit of crunchy because the paint stiffens it up. But let's talk about this stuff before we do anything to it. So this is wet strength tissue, and this is, I'm going to tear this in half because it's too big. This is regular old tissue. And the first thing that I want to show you is that the wet strength is superior in as much as it's going to hold on, it's going to not fall apart when I pull on it. So if I just come in and I liberally apply water to both of these, so everything's nice and wet. If I pick up the regular tissue, it has some body and it's fine, but the minute I start to pull on it, if I pull too hard, it's not going to take much. So if I do this, you can see it's not going to take much for that to rip. And if I pull really hard on this, it just kind of shreds. This stuff, the wet strength, is a whole different beast. So yes, I could tear this if I want, but I can start to pull, and you can see that I'm pulling pretty hard here, and this is not, it did finally shred, but it has much more stability than the regular tissue paper does. Now, interestingly enough, this stuff, and it comes in a big sheet. So here is, I want to say that this is 24 by 30, this massive sheet. It's too big for us to get in the frame when we film facing down like this. And not everyone has the ability to have a giant workspace. So I cut these into quarters, and that's about what I have going on here. This stuff has a smooth side and a rough side. There's another piece of this someplace, and on this on one side I worked on the smooth, and on the other, for one piece I worked on the smooth, and for the other I worked on the slightly rougher, and there was no difference that I could discern. The color bled through to the work surface underneath pretty much the same way, and I don't honestly believe there's any difference about how you use this. I think that it is the same no matter which side. So let's talk about paint. I'm gonna bring some colors in here. Let's kind of move this like this. Whoops, kind of spread this out. Well, yeah, so when you tear it, obviously eventually it will continue to tear. So let's just take that off and we'll work with a smaller piece. What I'm gonna do is I've just got a pink and an orange. I wanna put some color on here. And I want to show you that you can brayer on this. There's lots of different ways that you can apply color. I've actually worked with sprays. I'm not going to today, but you can do that as well. So if I just come in and I start to roll this around, I can brayer color on here and it works just fine. Same thing here. I can add these, I can add these colors. So I've got some some pink and some orange on there, and I can pick this up. And you can see that this is pretty darn stable. And I've got color coming through. You can see it a little bit here. If I kept it this, the color would pretty much soak through the paper. But here's where this gets interesting. So let's clean this up a little bit. This is something that you can do with this that I believe you might be able to do if you were super, super careful, but with this you don't need to be. So I'm gonna take some of this. This is just one of the Art Alchemy Sparks, and I'm gonna lay it out here. And what I wanna do is show you how you can very coolly scrunch this. So rather than brayer this on, I'm just going to spread it out, and I'm going to turn this face down so that I'm working wet paint into wet paint, and I'm going to scrunch. And by doing this, I can pick this up now, and I get all this patterning that happens where the scrunches that were kind of up inside did not get colored with the purple paint. So you can really do fun things with this. You can get interesting patterns with that whole scrunching effect. Now, obviously, there's way more that you can do with this. Elizabeth is going to be up next. She's going to show you some other things, and we'll eventually film some other videos as we continue to explore what you can do with this wet strength tissue.
Barb showed you some awesome techniques for painting the wet strength tissue paper and its properties when wet, and I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. So this is the wet strength, and this is the regular old tissue, and I'm getting that wet, and I just want to pick this up and show you how I can basically pull and push my fingers through this, and I don't get any tearing in the wet strength tissue. It's really strong when it's wet, which is super helpful when we want to apply paint to it. Now, the regular tissue, when I get under here with my fingers, we just have not so much of the same effect. We get a tearing pretty immediately. So the benefit of this, obviously, is when we are painting it and using water and water media. So I am gonna put this on the desktop and I'm gonna scrunch it intentionally. I'm gonna push it together so I can create all these kind of wrinkles where the paint will settle in, and it'll give us that really kind of neat effect of the paint settling in those low wrinkle areas. So there's no problem stretching this back out, pushing it back together. It's not going to tear. You can lift it up, reposition it, flip it over, start over. I've even completely balled this up with paint on it like Barb did, and then open it back up to see what I got. So I've stamped on it and then crumpled it. You can have all kinds of fun with it. But what I want to do today is just to push it together on the wet surface of the nonstick craft sheet and then add some color. So first I'm going to add some Amsterdam bronze. That really doesn't look like bronze, Barb. It looks like copper to me.
Well, we didn't get a choice in the name.
Isn't bronze supposed to be on the silver side?
I
Anyway.
don't think so, but whatever. It's
So
metallic.
yes, it's metallic. Yes, this is true. So now I'm just putting this onto the paper, onto the desktop, not worrying about it tearing, not worrying about me putting too much pressure on it. Definitely need more paint. I'm going to paint this on there like full strength because the paper is wet, and then that's going to make this really vibrant in the color. Okay, so that's super cool. And the great thing about this craft sheet is, I'm going to get my hands dirty, but whatever, is that we can just let it dry on here and then it'll peel off. If you are doing this and you do not have the craft sheet, you're going to want to do it on a sheet of traditional palette paper or plastic, because it will stick, because the acrylic paint is a polymer based and it will stick if you put it on paper. So just know that. Okay, going in. All right, so now I'm going to come back in with a darker color, some kind of pinky red here that I can't read because it's too small. Or maybe that's just a straight up red. This one I'm going to add more water to. Ooh, that's fun.
Yep, I like the way that's bleeding.
And then I'm going to spray this so that this darker color will settle in to the wrinkles. Oh, this is a lot of water, Barb.
It's going to take a little time to dry.
Yeah, it is. We're going to have to move to a different table after this. Look at how cool that looks.
It's really pretty.
So when it dries, the dark is going to settle down into those areas that I've crunched together. Now this is really wet, so I don't know if this last part is going to work, but what I wanted to do was to stamp on top of it with a foam stamp. So I've got a little 5x7 gel plate that I'm going to put out to the side to use as a palette. I find that the brayer gets covered in paint better on the palette than it does on the desktop. So I'm just rolling this out, and I'm gonna dip the stamp into the paint there. You have to put out a little bit more than you think you would use for gel printing. And then stamp. Let's see what happens. Ooh, that's kind of interesting.
We like that. Well, I mean, you've got complementary colors with the purple and the red, and it stands up and shouts, "Pay attention to me."
And this is wet and watery, so we don't need actually for this pattern to show up necessarily. It could just kind of marbleize the paint. If I had used less water, we would, or wait for it to dry to a certain degree. I mean, but you're still not going to get a distinct stamp, because when you pull apart all these wrinkles, it's going to separate. But it is adding color in a different way, and the pressing that I'm doing is not tearing the paper, even though we have all this water. So that's not even in the camera, Barb. There.
It's for me.
I might have to use your angle. Oops. Anyway, so here we have a big watery mess. And I'm going to let it dry like this so that it dries in those crumply areas. But if I wanted to transfer this at this point, if I wasn't depending on the crumples, I can certainly lift this paper right up without worrying about it tearing and moving it off to the side and setting it on a piece of plastic or an alternative surface. But because I want the watery paint to dry and settle into those crinkles, I'm just going to leave it here. So, we made a scarf or a cowl neck or
whatever. Yeah.
Or whatever. A fashion statement.
And even if you get caught out in the rain, it's not going to fall apart.
Right. If I get caught out in the rain, I'll put it over my head.
There you go. So we hope you have a good time with this. We can promise you that there are going to be more wet strength videos coming, or wet strength tissue videos coming, because we have lots and lots of ideas.
Yeah, and tons of time.
Yes, this too.
Okay then.
Bye.
See you next week.